Well, what an interesting and slightly controversial discussion we had. And now it's time for the kind of wrap-up of the day. The German Environment Agency, as you know, is not only leading the consortium in the HBM4EU project involving 120 partners in 30 countries. The agency, or our Umweltbundesamt, as we call it in German, is also one of the two hosts here of this conference today. So I'm sure the agency and its management kept a close eye and a close ear on the discussions and updates we received. And now the questions are, where do we go from here? What will be important in the near future? And what is the way forward within the EU and maybe beyond? For a wrap-up of today's highlights, please welcome from the UBA, Lilian Busse.
Yes, I'm happy to be here to wrap up the exciting international conference, and I agree with our moderator. There was an exciting last panel that we had here. But before I say a few words, I would like to thank, first of all, I would like to thank the attendees. I think there were several hundred of them today, so thank you for attending the conference and hanging in there Friday afternoon until 5, so thank you for that. I also want to thank the speakers, the presenters, the panelists and the chairs, that you did an excellent job moderating these panels, and also thank you to the moderator who in a friendly but firmly way led us to the conference, and so we were right on time. So that was great. I would also like to thank the technical support. I think it went very smoothly. I think we all had several, I don't know, 100 or so conferences in the last 6 months, so I think this went very smoothly, and just a few hiccups in the beginning, but thank you for that. And then lastly, thank you to the organizers. A lot of them are my colleagues for organizing this conference and then also making the shift from a conference here in Berlin to a hybrid conference, and I think this worked very well, so thank you for that. So I don't want to keep you much longer. A lot of things have been said since this morning, 9:30. But I want to make a few points. I want to summarize a few points and then maybe a few key messages I take home I want to present to you. So, I mean, this conference has clearly showed that we need this network and that we need the strength of this network, and it really benefits us that we bring together the experts, that we bring together the knowledge and the data, and that we exchange this on a national, of course, on a European level, but I think we also saw today that we need to do it on a global level. So that's really important. And what we have also heard and from multiple presentations and panelists, that we have hundreds of chemicals in our bodies, and we need to work on the methods. It's important that we have targeted and non-targeted methods, that we are fishing for chemicals that we don't even know, that there are mixtures in our bodies that we don't know how they impact our bodies. So there are lots of things, the necessity, but also the complexity of the HBM guidance values. So we heard a lot about that, and I think we're making steps forward in finding solutions for all these issues. Then we also heard a lot about regulations and policies, and they touch on different areas. So we heard about the chemical policy, and I will talk about this a little later too, then the sustainability policy, the health policy, the environmental policies. So all these things come together, and so with the human biomonitoring data, we can actually push regulatory processes and policies, but then we also see, once they're implemented, how they act and if we have to actually adapt those. We talked a little bit about communications and communication to the citizens so they can make better choices in consumption and health choices. And also, maybe the citizens will then ask for more information on hazardous chemicals and substances. What this means is human biomonitoring must be in the toolbox for sustainable chemical management. We have to establish a systematic use of HBM data, And we have to explore regulatory options, of course. And I think we heard a lot about this morning from Marika Kolossa about the HBM4U project. So it's a great foundation to do all this work, and it's also a great foundation for the new partnership of risk assessment, PARC, and I think they did an amazing contribution to some of the solutions we presented today. And I really think it was something good that Mr. Jacke said this morning, human biomonitoring shouldn't be a watchdog but a guardian angel. So keep that in mind. So I now want to get to the 6 key take-home messages, at least for me, I take from this conference. So first of all, we need to work on a global approach. I mean, this is a worldwide problem. We think about the chemical production, the chemical use, and the chemical recycling. We heard from Africa today, so we live in a globalized world. So we heard from, of course, the European Union. We heard about work done in Canada and the US. We heard about work from Africa and Japan. And so I think we really need to think human biomonitoring in a global way. Then what we also heard, we all have the same problems. You know, the problems are really the persistent chemicals. I mean, we heard a lot about the perfluorinated chemicals. You also probably heard that there's a movie coming out, Dark Waters, so that will be exciting, how it's perceived in the public, but also the new EFSA levels. We heard about the pesticides, for example, the replacement chemicals, and the emerging chemicals. So all these are a problem, and these are a problem on a global level. What we also heard that we might need to bring together in a closer way the environmental and human monitoring. So we heard from Africa about that, and we also know that this will be addressed in the new partnership PARC as well. Fourth, and we just heard that in the last panel, so we have to work on the science policy interface, and I think HBM4U has done that in a really good and prominent way and has that on the agenda. Marika Kolossa mentioned that this morning. So we have to work on the science policy interface, and we already heard about all the policies. I mean, I mentioned just a few that you heard today, SDGs and the European Green Deal, the zero pollution, the chemical strategy, and so on. So working on those also in the new partnership will be important. Fifth, and we heard that in the last panel, we really need to make chemicals, products, and the process safe by design. This is actually the way to reduce the chemicals in our body. We heard that today and in the last panel. We have to have a common understanding what green and sustainable chemistry is, and Mr. Brünix mentioned that this morning. And I would say we don't start from scratch. There are already some things out there, for example, SciChem, and the Minister of the Environment this morning already mentioned it. We have a conference next year. SciChem stands for the Strategic Approach to International Chemical Management. Also, Germany has the ISC3, which stands for the International Sustainable Chemistry Collaborative Center. There we also work on sustainable and green chemistry, so I think we already have some infrastructure to work on that. And then maybe 6, and Japan mentioned that in their talk, the economic calculations and the likely impacts of human biomonitoring chemicals in our bodies. And so we should think about how we might use that more. And we all know that the climate scientists already use the economic analysis and calculations quite a lot, and what the impact is. So maybe to finish, we heard a lot about the chemical strategy today, and recently from Christina in the last panel. We're looking forward that the strategy is coming out on October 14, and then under the German presidency in December, we will have an orientation debate in the Environment Council. So we are excited about that. So stay tuned, and I think our moderators will say a few more words. So thank you so much.
Well, what remains for me to say is that it was an honor being your moderator here today, and an honor experiencing this hybrid conference with so many technical questions involved, and I think we figured that out quite well over the day. I guess one of the key findings, and I only have 2 sentences to add today. I guess one of the key findings for all of us is that COVID-19 won't stop relevant stakeholders like yourselves from coming together and sharing their point of views. This conference proves on an international level that this exchange is still possible and very, very necessary. So I wish you all, let's talk about weekend strategy now, because we've been talking about chemical strategy. I wish you all a very good evening and a good weekend, and take care.